Choosing the design and world of a story of a game is challenging. Creating the right concoction, and will it leave an irrevocable print on a person? The journey of a game takes the player on a wild ride that stays as a core memory, piercing the curtain of a person's emotions. When it comes to a game, chasing the high of a good story is tough. And with Baldur's Gate 3, the pacing, the story, and the combat is all done in a way that promotes a deep resonance, an emotional connect. It left me wanting more, yet satisfied with the journey I had just been on. What's going on, you guys? It's your Huggable Hipster here, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I will be discussing my review of Baldur's Gate 3. My gosh, this was a journey. This was a long game. 99.5 hours put into this entire game. It was a monster. It was a beast. Going into Baldur's Gate 3, I was expecting to be met with some resistance on my part purely because I already wasn't too much of a fan of turn-based games. Yes, they're okay and they have their interesting points, but for me, turn-based games become repetitive after a while. But in Baldur's Gate 3, the way it handles turn-based mechanics creates a dynamism so the player doesn't feel like there's the same thing going on over and over and over again. It's quite refreshing and genius, actually. There's only so many ways you can do a turn-based game, and Larian managed to make it so that there is a level of depth and urgency to the way turn-based mechanics are handled. Traversing through all three acts of this game felt like living another life. There were ups, there were downs, there was romances, emotional turmoil, and gut-wrenching decisions that needed to be made. We don't see the crux of the story until the end of Chapter 2, going into Chapter 3. With needing to find the Nether Stones, adventuring through the backstories of your companions, plus additional side quests you can play through, it's safe to say this game is a never-ending story in the best way possible. I capped off my time with this game at 99.5 hours, and yes, I did create a new character right after that. Each character that is your travel companion in this game has their own unique backstory that is so intricate and well done, it could honestly be its own DLC. Astarion, for example, has this entire side quest attached to his story that took me, honestly, a few days to complete. Going from telling the player about Cazador to seeing Astarion question his morals when he's faced with obtaining ultimate power in Ascension, it was honestly beautifully heartbreaking. Now, if you romance Astarion, which I did, then you can either have him ascend or ground him in who he is and show him that he doesn't need to be like Cazador to have everything he wants. Even if you don't romance Astarion, you can help him in making the choice to ascend or not to ascend. Let's dive into the mechanics. The mechanics of this game are an experience, to say the least. Unlike a lot of turn-based games, in my experience, the mechanics with Baldur's Gate 3 aren't an afterthought. They are a steady flowing piece of the puzzle that is this game. The replayability factor lies in the fact that this isn't just a turn-based game. It's a movie-like experience with turn-based mechanics. The choices you have to make throughout this game create the experience for the player, and no two experiences will ever be the same when a person plays Baldur's Gate 3. While yes, the mechanics are a huge chunk of what make this game, I would say that's only 30% of what make this game a joy to go through. Seeing as how I'm just getting into Dungeons & Dragons, seeing dice rolls for the first time, and seeing as how the dialogue choices I made throughout the game impacted how not only the battle would go, but the rest of the act, I was thoroughly shocked at just how intense this whole experience was to play through. Each way you could go about each section in each act was different, and while yes, there is a main storyline, you could technically go through side quests in each act before going on the main storyline. Now keep in mind, there are progression points with main bosses you have to take on, but before that, you can do whatever you like in this game to level up. This game was a gift to the gaming industry that I will never forget. There's so much in this game that poured out its soul to me in the most meaningful way possible. From the meaningful dialogue I got to experience between my character and Astarion, which brought me to tears, to Withers, who is one of the best characters in a game, to the final hurrah after defeating the Netherbrain with my comrades. There's only so many words I can put together to describe my undying love for this game. The only real negatives I have of my experience with this game was the pacing of the final act and the constant crashing of the game. I played on PC, it was crashing every hour or as soon as I would enter into the first 5 minutes of my playtime. It got rather annoying, so I hope Larian patches it soon. As for the pacing of Act 3, it was rather strange. Since every chapter before that was methodically done and seemed more intensive, Act 3 felt a tad bit more rushed than Act 1 and 2. Even the final boss battle felt a bit off. 2 phases and they went by rather quickly. Even the fight with Gortash was a bit more intense and took me a couple of days to figure out. Maybe it's just because it was the end of the game and that's why it felt rather rushed, but I'm not entirely sure. My personal score for Baldur's Gate 3, 4.7 out of 5. But you guys, that was my review of Baldur's Gate 3. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you all like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. I make videos every weekday here on YouTube. May you find your worth in the waking world, your hunter. Stay casually nerdy, and I will see you all in the next video. Umbasa.